Many years ago, in the beautiful city of Calabar, lived a man called Chief Asukwo Ekong, a very serious man. People respected him not because he shouted, but because his silence alone could settle arguments. He walked like a man whose future was already written with a bold pen. And every morning, he left the house in a clean senator wear, with his shoes shining like a mirror. While every evening, he returned with dust on his trousers and stories about traffic, contracts, and stress. In his house, Oda lived like firstborn child. His wife, Ekaite, used to call him Chief, even inside the bedroom. "Chief, your food is ready," she would say. And if she mistakenly called him Asukwo, she would quickly clear her throat and correct herself. He had 3 children, and they all knew that once their father cleared his throat, silence should be the next thing. When he simply called Ini, the firstborn already knew the problem had reached advanced level. When he looked at Effa without talking, Effa already knew that punishment was loading slowly like network. Nkoyo, the smallest one, needed no explanation. Once Daddy adjusted his sitting posture, she would just carry her toy and disappear quietly. So, imagine their shock when one Wednesday evening, Chief Asokwo came back from work, holding his phone with 2 hands as if it was something fragile. Everybody shifted immediately. Ekaite peeped from the kitchen. "Chief, is everything okay?" He did not answer. The children watched him enter the sitting room without complaining about traffic. He did not ask what was for dinner. Neither did he shout about the generator. He only sat down and began to smile at his phone like a man watching his wedding video for the first time. In a whisper to Effa, "Is Daddy all right?" Effa shook his head slowly. "This is not Daddy behavior," Nkoyo added. "Daddy is smiling too much." Well, what none of them knew was that earlier that same day, a young office assistant had mistakenly played a loud TikTok video during work hours. People were dancing wildly and shouting strange things like, "We outside this December, what's cooking? Say less." At first, Chief Asukwo shouted from inside his office, "Who is making that useless noise?" But when the boy nervously brought the phone closer and said, "Sir, this is what is trending," Chief adjusted his glasses and watched for 3 seconds, then 10, then 1 full minute. He muttered, stretching his neck. "Play that one again." Boom. That was where the seed was planted. That night, the same chief that slept before 9 p.m. was still awake by past midnight, with his phone under the blanket like a schoolboy hiding torchlight. He downloaded TikTok and watched video after video, amazed at how these children talk. No cap, we move, vibes only. By morning, Instagram entered his phone. By the next day, Snapchat joined. And by the 3rd day, Gen Z language entered his mouth. That was how when Ekaite greeted him the next morning and said, "Good morning, Chief," he replied mysteriously, "What's cooking?" Her spoon almost dropped. "Chief, what did you just say?" He laughed. "I said, what's cooking now? You people are too old school." The children burst into laughter. Ini clapped. "Daddy, stop this acting." Effa bent down laughing. "Daddy, you are not serious." Even Nkoyo said, "Daddy, that is not how you talk." But Chief Asukwo smiled proudly. "You people think I am joking. I am updating myself." They all laughed and assumed it would end there. But it did not. The following Sunday, instead of his normal white senator, he appeared in a skinny black jeans that looked like it was fighting for space with his legs. He added black glasses and tucked in his shirt sharply. At church, people stared at him. One elder asked, "Is Chief Ekong acting a film?" Another person answered, "It must be midlife crisis." After service, One woman casually told Ekaite, "Your husband is now looking like an Instagram uncle." Ekaite was embarrassed, but Asukwa couldn't be bothered. In fact, his change increased dangerously. He began to tell his children, "Morning, my G, good night, young blood." He called his wife "my person" and started snapping mirror pictures that nobody requested. When Ini begged him, "Daddy, please stop posting pictures. My classmates are following you," he waved his hand and said, "Fame no dey respect age." One evening during dinner, he suddenly dropped his spoon and announced proudly, "I will attend the next PTA meeting myself." Ini froze. Efa nearly choked. Nkoyo looked up and asked innocently, "Daddy, will you wear your normal clothes?" Chief smiled confidently. "Don't worry, we outside." From that moment, fear entered that house like a visitor and refused to leave. Unfortunately for them, they had no idea that their chief daddy was already thinking of how to make a guest appearance. That night, after everybody had gone to bed, he stood in front of the mirror and studied his face closely. He then touched his grey beard and sighed slowly. "They think I am old, but they will see that Big Ekong is still relevant." By morning, his decision had already matured inside him like ripe pawpaw. He dressed up and told Ekaite he was going to check one site inspection before work. Ekaite looked at him suspiciously. "Chief, site inspection with jeans?" Chief smiled. "My person, branding is important." She shook her head. "God forbid." However, instead of going straight to the office, Chief Asukwa drove himself to Wat Market, a place where life does not ask questions and shame does not live long. As soon as he stepped out of the car, young boys selling clothes rushed him like fans chasing a musician. "Chairman, come see Drip. Uncle, original body jeans here. Boss, Oversabi hoodie day here." He stood there confused at first because they all looked younger than his socks. But his pride refused to hear any warning. "Which one is body jeans?" he asked seriously. One boy quickly brought a ripped skinny jean with more holes than sense. "This one, sir, now the current vibe be this." Chief Asukwa carried it and examined it like an engineer checking a faulty engine. "Where will my legs pass?" The boy smiled confidently. "Sir, leg go manage." Against all spiritual warnings, Chief bought it. Yes, that same jean. Next came a big oversized hoodie that could cover 2 people and still hide 3 secrets. Then the sneakers with blinking lights. Ekaite would have fainted if she saw the prices. But that was not even all. The most dangerous purchase was yet to happen. A boy quietly brought out a dread wig. Full black, heavy and confident. "Big man, this one will complete the movement." Chief Asukwa touched it gently. "Is this real hair?" The boy replied, "Sir, even ancestors won't know the difference." And that was how Big Ekong became Big Problem. Next, he went to the tailor shop where he stood for more than 1 hour as measurements were taken. The young tailor looked at him from head to toe and asked politely, "Uncle, is this outfit for a music video?" Chief Asukwa replied proudly, "For a school meeting." The tailor swallowed his spit. When he finally got back home in the evening with the market black nylon bags swinging on both hands like a trophy, his children sensed danger. Ini whispered, "Shopping bags from what market and daddy is smiling." Efa replied, "Hey, trouble is loading." Nkoyo ran closer. "Daddy, what did you buy?" Chief winked. "Surprise." That night, after everybody slept, he locked the guest room, switched on the lights, wore the skinny jeans with great struggle and 2 loud sighs, forced the hoodie over his head, squeezed into the sneakers that blinked like Christmas decoration, placed the dread wig on his head, and stood before the mirror. He adjusted his glasses and smiled. "Big Ekong, we outside." He practiced walking. He took 1 step too fast and almost fell. He tried again. Calm down, he told himself. He practiced greeting. What's cooking? But it sounded too dry. He said, we outside. Well, that one came out too aggressive. As he said, no cap, his wife coughed outside and he nearly fainted but quickly turned off the lights. The following morning, he woke up earlier than everybody and began posing in front of the mirror. Snap, delete, snap, delete. Finally, he snapped one picture and posted it with the caption, Big Ekong in the building, we move. That was when his classmates found him. By 10 a.m., her phone was hot like frying pan. Ini, is this your dad? Why your dad they dress like DJ now? Your papa don't run mad before? She ran out and cried in the toilets. Meanwhile, at home, Ekaite finally cornered him. Asukwo, what is all this nonsense I am seeing online? He waved his hand. My person, don't dull my shine. Shine care. You are shining disgrace for your children. Chief laughed. You women fear relevance. That evening, the children begged again. He knelt down. Daddy, please, don't dress like this to our PTA. Efa added, they will kill us with laughter. Nkoyo held his leg. Daddy, people will think you are our big brother. But Big Ekong smiled proudly. That one is a compliment now. Then he stood up and told them to wait for a surprise. They all waited in suspense and Chief went in to wear the dread wig. When he came out of the room like a celebrity visiting the village, Ekaite screamed, Jesus Christ of Nazareth! He fainted on the sofa. Efe covered his face while Nkoyo clapped slowly. Daddy looks like a radio presenter. Finally, the day of the PTA meeting arrived like judgment morning, and from as early as 6 a.m., the Ekong house was not breathing normally because fear was moving from room to room like rats looking for where to hide. He woke up with stomach pain that did not need hospital, and Efa brushed his teeth 3 times because shame was already tasting bitter in his mouth, while Nkoyo kept asking whether Daddy would still change his mind. As for Ekaite, she sat on the bed staring at the ceiling and whispering prayer that God should touch her husband's heart before disgrace touched its first. Chief Asukwo, on his own part, woke up with joyful anticipation as if he was going for an award ceremony and not PTA, because by 7 a.m. he had already locked himself inside the guest room with all the shopping bags arranged on the bed like sacrificial items. He brought out the skinny jeans first and struggled into it with great effort and small groaning noise. Then he wore the oversized hoodie, added the blinking sneakers, carried the dread wig like a crown, and placed it on his head with confidence. He adjusted his glasses and looked at himself in the mirror for long. Then he smiled at his reflection. Big Ekong, today we outside. Meanwhile, in the sitting room, Ini was pacing like a prisoner waiting for verdicts, while Efa sat with his hand on his head, and Nkoyo was holding her school bag like a shield, as if it could protect her from embarrassment. Ekaite finally gathered courage and knocked on the guest room door. Asukwo, please, don't do this to your children. The door opened slowly and Big Ekong stepped out. For 3 seconds, nobody breathed. The dread wig stood firm like an antenna. The hoodie hung loose like a rapper uniform. The skinny jeans clung to his legs as if they were afraid to fall. The sneakers blinked red and blue and green like traffic lights. Ekaite screamed first, Jesus, take the wheel. Ini sat down on the floor immediately. Efa whispered, they will finish us today. Nkoyo shook her head slowly and said, Daddy looks like cartoon. Chief Asukwo smiled proudly. Full package, let's move. Inside the car, nobody spoke. Only the sneakers were still blinking under the seats like danger signal. When they arrived at the school gates, parents were already entering dressed in mature wrappers, simple suits and shirts, conference shoes and responsible faces. Some were even holding jotters. Some came with files, while some came with headache of school fees. Then suddenly, sound entered. Boom, boom, boom. Chief Asuquo had connected a Bluetooth inside the car and Afrobeat music poured out like flood. He stepped out slowly. The security man froze. Parents stopped walking. A teacher dropped her phone. Children pointed. A small boy whispered, "Is that the DJ?" Chief Asuquo adjusted his glasses and shouted happily, "We outside." Silence answered him. Then he added confidently, "What's cooking, PTA fam?" One woman hissed, "God forbid." Inside the hall, parents arranged their chairs quietly while the principal was already sweating before the meeting even started because Big Ekong entered like a music video extra and walked to the front with style. His sneakers kept blinking like an emergency signal. People were whispering, "Whose father is that? Maybe he came to fix the sound though." No, that dread is not real. When it was time for self-introduction, the parents stood up one by one and spoke maturely. "I am Mrs. Okon, mother of peace. I am Mr. James, father of Daniel." When it finally reached Big Ekong, he stood up slowly and cleared his throat. The dread shook and the hall went silent. "I be Big Ekong," he proudly said, "father of Ini, her plug, we move." For 3 seconds, nobody talked. Then one cough scattered inside the hall. The principal adjusted his glasses. The teachers looked at each other. Ini bent her head until it touched her chest. When the discussion about school fees started, one parent complained that things were expensive. Big Ekong jumped up again. "Money no be problem, but vibes must dey," he declared. One elderly mother whispered, "Is this man okay?" Then the worst thing happened. A teacher stood up and politely said, "Sir, your son Effa has been performing poorly in class. We would need you to give your attention at home." Some parents nodded seriously, but Big Ekong stood again. "Academics no be everybody's calling," he said confidently. "Some people get street IQ." That was when the hall exploded. Parents gasped. Teachers froze. Two mothers shouted, "Ah!" The principal nearly removed his glasses. In its spirit left her body. Effa's soul followed it. Nkoyo looked around and asked innocently, "What is street IQ?" Before the meeting even ended, phones were already recording secretly from under the tables. And by the time Chief Asuquo added one final comment, "Make we no dull our children with too much book. The world don't change." The video had already left the school and landed on WhatsApp, Telegram and TikTok with the caption, "Which person papa be this?" As they entered the car after the meeting, Big Ekong was smiling, but the rest of the family was mourning. By nightfall, the clip had reached Calabar North, Calabar South, church groups, business groups and old classmates. That was how the name "We Outside Daddy" was born. By the next morning, the Ekong house did not wake up like a normal house again because laughter had packed its load and traveled. Silence was now the first child sitting on every chair. Fear was the second child lying on every bed, and embarrassment was the last child standing at the door and knocking without rest because before 6 a.m., Ini's phone was already vibrating like a generator. She did not even need to open the messages to know what they contained because the shame had already reached her bones from the previous night. She opened one message slowly that read, "Ini, now your daddy be this." Another one entered, "Your papa don't go viral." Another one said, "Abeg, tell your dad make he teach me street IQ." She locked her phone immediately, covered her face with a pillow and cried silently because school had turned into a battlefield overnight and she had lost her safe space. Effa refused to enter the bathroom. Ekaite called from the kitchen, "Effa, go and bathe now, you'll be late." He answered in a small frightened voice, "Mommy, I don't want to go to school today." Why? Ekaite asked. Because they'll laugh at me. Nkoyo stood at the door holding her school bag and asked, Mommy, has Daddy spoiled our name? Ekaite looked at her child and had no answer. At school that day, the children did not walk like before. They walked like people going to court. As soon as Ini entered her class, somebody shouted from the back, "Ah, street IQ daughter!" Laughter filled the room. Another boy added, "We outside Mommy and Daddy." Efa's own torment was worse. They called him Big Ekong Jr., say less scholar, and street IQ passbook. That afternoon, Nkoyo returned home with tears. "Mommy, they said my daddy is a DJ in the night." That evening, Ekaite finally faced her husband. "Asuko, have you checked your phone today?" He smiled casually. "Alerts they cry, popularity na water." "Popularity?" Ekaite shouted. "Your daughter is hiding in the toilet at school. Your son was mocked till he refused to talk. Your smallest child came home crying. Is this still popularity?" For the first time, Big Ekong's smile reduced. He brought out his phone and froze. This was not funny anymore. The next day, when he went to work, even his colleagues no longer greeted him normally. His business partner called and laughed awkwardly. "Asuko, this your new brand, na comedy brand?" Clients reduced their calls and 2 contracts that were almost finalized suddenly slowed down. One client even joked, "Oga, no vex. I know today comfortable with street IQ logistics." Even at church that evening, things became worse. People talked about him as he passed. Elders avoided eye contact with him. One small boy even pointed and said loudly, "Mommy, that is the man that said we outside." Ekaite held her husband's hand. "Asuko, enough." But pride still argued inside him. Let people talk now. Today they will laugh. Tomorrow they will beg. Then, late that night, when Big Ekong was walking past the children's room, he heard sad voices. Ini was crying. "I can't take this again. I want to change school." Efa replied with anger, "I told Daddy not to go there without clothes. Now everybody thinks we are mad people." Nkoyo's small voice joined. "I don't like Daddy's hair again." Those words entered Asuko's chest like nails. He stood outside the door for a long time, and for the first time since the madness started, reality knocked on his head. He went to his room and sat on the bed without removing his shoes. He opened his phone again and saw his videos still everywhere. His face, his dread, his blinking shoes, his voice saying street IQ. Caption after caption, Mumu with confidence. "When your papa joined Gen Z late, we outside your dignity." At that moment, shame finally caught up with him. He slowly removed the wig and dropped it on the floor like a defeated soldier. The next morning, Chief Asuko Ekong did not wake up with any plans in his head or pride in his chest. A heavy feeling sat on his heart like a wet cloth and refused to dry because when he opened his eyes, he remembered everything at once. The PTA hall, the laughter, the looks, the videos, the children's tears, and shame greeted him before Ekaite could even say, "Good morning, Chief." The dread wig was still on the floor where he had dropped it the night before, and as he looked at it, he did not even see content anymore. He only saw foolishness staring back at him like a mirror. Slowly, he bent down, picked it up and tied it inside a nylon tightly as if it could escape and cause more disgrace. Ekaite watched him from the door. "Asuko, what are you going to do now?" For a long time he said nothing. Then he answered, "I will go to the school today." She looked at him sharply. "To do what?" "To face it," he replied. Ini and Eka had already prepared their minds to endure more mockery, while Nkoyo had already decided that she would no longer tell people her father worked with logistics. But when they heard the sound of their father's car starting, they all rushed to the window and stopped in shock. Their father had changed. He had no dread on him, no hoodie, no skinny jeans, and no blinking shoes. Only plain trousers, a simple shirt, a clean face, and a lowered shoulder. Chief Asuko was back. Ini muttered, "Daddy looks normal again." Efa replied bitterly, "It's too late." At the school gate that morning, the teacher stared again, but this time not in shock but in confusion, because yesterday's big Ekong could not be the same man walking in quietly today. When he asked to see the principal, they almost refused at first, but when he said, "I came to apologize," they led him straight to the office. Inside the office, the principal looked at him carefully. "Mr. Ekong, are you aware of what happened after that meeting?" Asukwo nodded. "I saw everything, and I know I caused everything." The principal sighed. "Your words damaged your child's image in one afternoon, more than a bad result would have done in 1 year." Asukwo bowed his head. "I came to repair what my foolishness broke." That same afternoon, against the advice of some teachers, the principal allowed a short gathering of the senior students before closing time. And as Chief Asukwo stood on that same assembly ground where his voice had once embarrassed his children, his legs shook for the first time in public, not because of power, but because of shame. He cleared his throat and began, "My name is Asukwo Ekong, not Big Ekong." The students listened attentively. "I came to say I was wrong. I tried to be what I am not, and my children paid the price for it. I wrongly joked about what is serious. I wrongly turned responsibility into comedy. I wrongly made my son look like a joke and my daughter look like a meme." He turned and looked at Efa and Ini. "I am sorry." For 3 seconds, silence covered the place. Then one clap came, then another, then a round of applause spread slowly like butter. But not everybody forgave immediately. Some students still laughed at them secretly. Some still whispered street IQ under their breath. But at least the fire had reduced. However, outside the school gates, the last consequence was still waiting. Later that same day, one of his biggest clients called him. "Asuko, I won't lie to you. My board said they no longer feel comfortable associating with a man whose brand is viral comedy. We will not renew the contract." Unfortunately, that was the same contract that paid for Ini's SS3 total fees. For the first time in his life, fun truly became expensive. That night, the Ekong family sat at the dining table until Ini finally spoke. "Daddy, people are still laughing at me, but I am trying to cope." Efa added, "I am still angry, but I don't hate you anymore." Nkoyo said innocently, "Daddy, I like your old head." Everyone laughed through their tears. Asukwo nodded solemnly. "I lost my pride. I lost parts of my business, and I lost my public respect. But I will not lose my children again." From that week, Big Ekong disappeared and only Mr. Asukwo Ekong remained. This version was a quieter,